Right, hello, welcome to the Big Football Forum podcast. As always, hosting, my name's Dan, and also joining me this evening are Paul, Prof Gooner,
Good evening.
and we're also joined by Carnage.
Hello.
Are we well, gentlemen?
Can't
Very
complain,
well,
Dan.
thank you.
Good stuff. What I'd like to say before we start is, if you would like to join the discussion, you can always head over to www.big-football-forum.co.uk and you can log on there and give your thoughts, views and opinions on anything you want to. It just doesn't extend to football, but football is our game. If we start off then, gents, by just going over something I'd rather forget but we can't really ignore, the transfer deadline day. No one sent Jim White over the edge, which is unfortunate, but it was a pretty dramatic day in terms of Manchester City getting the cash finally on the move, and obviously the disappointment of Liverpool missing out on a striker.
Yeah, I think the big sort of the big stories seem to appear at, obviously, as you say, Manchester City. I think signed 5, didn't they, on the day, including Richard Wright, who, when we did our prediction the podcast sort of last week, Dan, I don't think any of us had Richard Wright on the list of possible Manchester City signings, but I suppose it makes sense as a sort of third choice goalkeeper who's at least got Premier League experience. And isn't going to expect to play very often, and then a sort of a mixed deadline day deadline couple of days for Tottenham. They did extremely well to get Dembele in, and obviously he made an impact instantly when he came on Saturday. He's a very good player, Dembele, and I think that'll be a good signing for Spurs. They also got Hugo Lloris, who, I mean, we saw Brad Friedel had an excellent game on Saturday as well, but Hugo Lloris is long-term for the money they've paid, about £12 million. That is an absolute snip. He's a fantastic goalkeeper, and he's one of the best in Europe, and he's young enough. I think he's 25. He'll still get better as well, so that's a fantastic long-term addition. But I think they missed out on possibly the most important one, which was Moutinho, who I really see as being the sort of the replacement for Modric. I think you've seen a few Spurs fans will certainly stand up on the forum saying the disappointment on Saturday was they're playing that 4-2-3-1, and the two playing in the central area in midfield are very defensive, and neither of them are really particularly creative players. And I see Moutinho as someone who could have played in that position and been the sort of modern deep line playmaker, if you like, and really got Spurs moving in the way that someone like a Modric used to. Obviously they then sort of stumbled upon Dempsey late in the window, and I think they've signed him, I would presume, as a centre forward. I think he played certainly the first half of last season for Fulham. He played mainly up front, and he gives them a nice option with Adebayor and Defoe. That obviously meant less good things for Liverpool.
Yeah, it was an infuriating day. We've had all too many of those recently, where we say, oh, we're looking to do this, we're looking to do that, and we end up with the grand total of nothing. I'm not disappointed per se to have missed out on Dempsey, but I am not happy that we've gone into the season not bringing in a striker at all. That's really massive failure in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, you know, there's clearly a lack of depth up front, and I think we know it's clear from what Brendan Rodgers has said that he would not have sanctioned the departure of Andy Carroll even on a loan to West Ham if he didn't think he was going to get some form of reinforcement.
It's just that there's a communication vacuum at the club. What the Americans need to do is change the chief executive, in my opinion. But if we're not going to do that, we certainly need to consider having a look at getting a proper American presence in L4 at all times, with a sort of a bat phone, if you will, straight to Boston, because it's almost amateurish. We're pathetic. The way we run is pathetic. It's as simple as that, I'm afraid. It pains me to say it, but it's just the truth, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't catch Alex Ferguson needing to make a phone call to where the Glazers based, Florida. You wouldn't catch Ferguson needing to get someone to ring up the Glazers.
Well, no, because I think David Gill has the authority to make the decisions, and I think that's the problem, as I understand it, the problem that Ian Ayre had, and I actually agree with you. I think he needs replacing. It's just been bungle after bungle, actually, in his time in charge. But it felt, watching the Sky coverage and listening to things that's been said since, that actually Ian Ayre couldn't make any decisions on Friday without placing a phone call with somebody in a different country. And as you say, Dan, that's not a sustainable position for making decisions, especially in a quick-moving scenario like the deadline day.
Yeah, and to that extent, you can't really blame Ian Ayre for that. You know, that's just the infrastructure the Americans have got set up. But my argument is that other teams have something concrete in place for when an eventuality like this rises, and they can deal with it, whereas we don't. We've now left ourselves depending on Luis Suarez just to get his shooting boots on, which he can't always do, but he's under a lot of pressure to produce goals. And when he plays for Uruguay, when he's quite prolific, he's got, you know, he divvies the goals out with the likes of Cavani, and I just wonder if that's potentially one of the issues. But I'm just very disillusioned with the way that the transfer deadline day went. It was horrible to hear Jim White screeching about no signings at Anfield yet and no signings at Anfield likely.
I suppose the other club we should probably touch on quickly in terms of transfer deadline day was Aston Villa, who maybe not necessarily signing established names that we've all heard of, but certainly got 3 or 4 players in, and probably they needed it because their squad was looking rather thin.
Yeah, they sneaked in under the radar, Villa. I mean, Belgium seems to be producing some top youngsters at the moment, and Villa got themselves in with a slice of that.
They got the striker from Genk, didn't they?
Mbop. I'm not too sure of his name, to be honest, but
no, I think it's Benkede, something along those lines. But if he's the one I think he is, he certainly did half a job against Chelsea in the Champions League last year. He was a bit of a handful and sort of put himself about a bit. So if that's the right person, if the person I have in the player I have in my mind image is the one that Villa have signed, I think probably they've paid a fair whack for him, but that might be long-term a decent signing. And I think I've said on the forum, obviously I know all about Ashley Westwood, and he's a quality passer of the ball, and it may take him 12-18 months to sort of really mature into a proper Premier League performer, but they've certainly signed a very, very good footballer for £2 million from Crewe.
Yeah, well, I was expecting you to have a say on Ashley Westwood, who's a good, as you say, has looked like a good player at that level. So, I mean, hopefully for him, he'll make the step up. Unusually calm, Sir Alex Ferguson kept his word, and there was no business.
Yeah, well, he did sign 2 players earlier on after he'd said he wasn't going to sign anymore. So, you know, he'd already got his fill on that front. But no, I mean, you know, I've no complaints really. I mean, the Berbatov thing got done, which I think we all thought it would. And you know, good luck to him really. I think he was a bit harsh how his sort of career ended at the club really. But you know, he obviously cost a lot of money, but I certainly wouldn't class him as a failure. He had a bit of an up and down career there, but you know, I wish him all the best at Fulham. I think he's a good signing for them. I'm not sure if there's any truth in the fact that Fiorentina cancelled the deal because he wasn't on the airport on time or something like that. But I don't know if that's true.
I think it was true, Cam. I think correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, if you've heard differently, but as far as I'm aware, he didn't turn up to his medical, and Fiorentina have basically, on behalf of the city of Florence, virtually issued a curse on him.
Yeah, I think, well, there was certainly something mysterious going on. I think Fergie's sort of press conference on Friday morning was quite funny. He could be literally anywhere with the words that Ferguson used. But apparently Mrs. Berbatov is very happy because she quite fancied living in West London, so she's chuffed.
Yeah, well, it's a good move. I mean, obviously, you know, back with Yol, and obviously they needed someone up front after, you know, with Dempsey going and Dembele as well. So it's probably a decent bit of a last minute deal for Fulham, to be fair. I mean, we'll come on to teams in a minute, but I think that they're a bit of a worry for this season, even with Berbatov, to be honest with you. But anyway.
Well, we'll start. That was the early kick-off, and I think that brings us on nicely to the Premier League games. In fact, no. What we'll do first is we'll talk about the contract stuff that you've mentioned, Paul, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine, Dan. It was really in response to the sort of speculation that's been mounting about having missed out on a striker on deadline day, whether Liverpool can look to do something in the free agency market. As we know, free agents are allowed to sign outside of the transfer window. That's true. However, there's some speculation about the position regarding Didier Drogba and Nicolas Anelka, who, if rumours are to be believed, are about to be or have been or will shortly be released from their contracts in China because the Chinese club that had, gazillions of pounds 12 months ago and was splashing the cash left, right and centre has now got £0. And therefore can't afford to pay Nicolas Anelka and Didier Drogba £500,000 a game, which sounds quite sensible to me. And the situation as I understand it, and the regulation as I understand it, when the sort of universal transfer window was brought in, was that yes, you are allowed to move as a free agent within the outside of the transfer window. However, that only applies if you are a free agent at the point that the transfer window closes. And the reason that regulation exists is to prevent a situation where, and I'll use again the example I used off the forum, Arsenal maybe in 3 weeks' time think, we maybe could have done with an extra striker, and they go off to Atletico Bilbao and say, that Llorente chap, we quite fancy him, why don't you release him? We'll register him as a free agent, he can start playing for us, and then we'll come back in January and buy that 17-year-old right back out of your youth academy for £22 million. And the regulation is written in that way to prevent those kind of scenarios happening, to prevent teams essentially circumnavigating the transfer window. Now, there is an exception even within that rule, which is that if your contract naturally ends during a non-transfer window period, you can be a free agent and you can sign for someone else. And that was designed to cover situations where leagues, for example, such as Russia, where I think their domestic league ends end of October, early November. If a player's contract is written to the end of a season, as it would normally be, and the Russian season ends in October, and that player's contract ends in October, and they don't sign a new contract and are therefore a free agent, they are then able to be signed. Now, I don't know exactly what the position would be in the case of Drogba and Anelka, where it's quite clear that they're being released because, or may be released because the club simply can't afford to pay them anymore, whether they would be able to convince the powers that be, FIFA or UEFA or whoever it is, that represents a natural ending of their contract, and therefore they are able to then go and sign for somebody before the 1st of January. I really don't know exactly how tight that regulation would be interpreted, and that would probably be a matter for FIFA to decide upon.
Can I just jump in there, Paul, just out of curiosity? Was it Greg Wild who was released by Rangers last year and immediately signed by Bolton but wasn't given clearance by FIFA because it wasn't a natural ending to his contract?
That's right. There's nothing to prevent you being signed. I should make that clear. There's nothing to prevent you actually signing with a club, but you can't be registered to play until the date on which the transfer window reopens. That is. You're right to sort of pick that up actually, because that is factually correct. There's nothing to prevent, say, Didier Drogba, again depending on the circumstances, being registered tomorrow by Liverpool. But they would need that FIFA clearance, being signed by Liverpool, but they would then need that FIFA clearance to register him to play. And as I say, I'm not sure how FIFA would view the termination of the Drogba and Anelka contracts, because I'm not sure how they would judge that in terms of, is it a natural ending or is it not? That would be a matter for them to decide upon. So it's certainly not clear cut, but I think there's certainly a huge question mark as to whether either Drogba or Anelka would be available to Liverpool in that scenario. Obviously, the one man who we all know is available to Liverpool in that scenario, because Phil Thompson spent 20 minutes sort of animatedly eulogising about him earlier on Sky Sports News, is one Michael Owen.
Yep. Next subject. No, of the, I mean, reading Twitter recently, it was suggested the difficulties that that Del Piero and Sydney have now been rectified, and he seems set to sign with them. But if we were going to do anything from the free from the free agents, I would probably have preferred Del Piero because he can play for 70 minutes, even though he's 37. He's a fit man, and he knows where the goal is. And I know it's a big ask because of the whole Juventus thing, but that would have been my preferred target. As it turns out, I think we will sign Owen, unfortunately.
Well, I've even seen something this evening saying Liverpool may or may not have made an inquiry about the availability of Emil Heskey.
I think that's a wind-up, mate. I don't think we'd go that far. Certainly not.
You won't be surprised to know that Sunderland are in for him. Martin O'Neill's made an inquiry.
No, Big Sam will be along in a minute as well, because from what I hear, the Andy Carroll injury is a bit more serious than West Ham first thought.
Well, I understand he now fear he may be out till Christmas.
Yeah, that's what I've heard
Really?
as well. Yeah, and the funny thing is, Khan as well. It's not funny because I like Andy Carroll and I don't want to not see him play. But like West Ham have taken over 100% of his wages, so they've basically flushed £85,000 a week down the pan.
Wow.
If that's the case.
Which isn't funny from Andy Carroll's point of view, but it is funny when you look at West Ham.
Yeah, well, this is a club that used to play Lewis Bournemouth, say £70,000 a week, so you know what I mean. But we wouldn't be looking at Heskey, and we may not look at Owen because Darius Vassell is also available.
Like a who's who of it's like Sven Goran Eriksson's dream team.
The thing is,
Sven has just got a job, hasn't he? Ironically enough, in China.
Darius got on the plane.
Sal may not be on the free agency list for very much longer.
Where is Owen the Hargreaves?
Yeah,
Well, he's another one.
He is, yeah. Sven will be straight on the phone. Come on, you four. Let's have
2003. He'll be back.
Let's have a chat. Yeah, I do think Michael Owen will sign for Liverpool. It's not ideal. It's not what we want, and I certainly will never forgive him for the comments he's made since he left the club. But from the point of view of personnel, it would be very churlish of me to complain about it too much.
I just have to say though, how does he always manage to land on his feet? If that does happen.
It could be all that horse training, mate. He's probably just picked it up on it somehow.
Well, I think he only does flat horses, doesn't he? So they don't have to jump.
He doesn't jump because every time he does, he gets injured.
Well, he leaves Newcastle where seemingly, he'd been useless for them for 12 months. He leaves with his career seemingly done, and gets a contract at Manchester United. Makes a bit of an impact in his first season. Spends the rest of the time sitting squarely on the physio's table for the majority, gets released after whatever it was, 3 or 4 years, and then due to sort of, unusual circumstances, might end up back at Liverpool. I mean, the man must be blessed.
Well, there's plenty of things I call Michael Owen, but blessed is one of them that is repeatable. Anyway, that was very interesting, that, Paul. I appreciate that. It's because I know a number of people have mentioned it, and going off what you've said on the forum, I've said, well, we can't sign Drogba and we can't sign Elka. They may well successfully argue that there is a natural ending to the contract, but I don't foresee that being the case.
Yeah, it certainly isn't straightforward to do it. That, I think, is the key point to get across.
Yeah, certainly. But if it's FIFA we're dealing with, they'll just say, well, send us 50 grand and we'll see what we can do. Anyway, if we move on to the weekend's matches, speaking of natural explorations of something, let's move on to the weekend's matches. Where would you like to start, Paul? I've not seen much myself. I only really saw our game because I've been working.
I'm yet to sit through a full match of the day one this season without falling asleep. So I'll go on a little bit of goals on Sunday that I've seen and match of the day two last night. Where to start? I would quite like to start with, for me, the team that continued to be the surprise package, which is West Bromwich Albion. Those of you with short memories might remember a few weeks ago me saying I suspected Steve Clarke could be in trouble quite early on. And as it stands, they've beaten Liverpool, beaten Everton, drawn with Tottenham, and they're sitting up there in whatever it is, second or third position in the league. So I think great credit to Steve Clarke. They look... I mean, we knew Steve Clarke was a good defensive coach, and they certainly look extremely well organised defensively, West Brom. And with the players they have in attack, the likes of Odin Wingy and Shane Long and whatever, they do possess a threat. So I think fair play to them. I think they're probably the surprise package at this stage, albeit obviously we're only 3 games in.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I mean, I think what you'll find is that I did say that I think West Brom will do okay.
Yeah, I think you did, Dan. Yeah, that's right.
What did you say, Cam? You thought you would be there or thereabouts, didn't you?
Yeah, I had some slight reservations over how Steve Clarke would handle, the step up, but I sort of hoped he'd do well, and it looks as though he is doing so. So fair play to him, really.
Yeah, early signs encouraging at West Brom.
Yeah, obviously it's early doors, and we've seen teams get off to trailblazing starts, and then.
Well, without wanting to put too much of a black mark against them, they may remember that their Black Country friends, Wolves, I think, were unbeaten in the first 3 games last season, and they were probably beating in most of the rest of them after that. So it's not always the best sign, but it's certainly a good start.
Well, see, this is what happens when you sack Mick McCarthy, no? We will get you started on that. Actually, you've touched on Spurs, and they do seem to be the in vogue crisis team at the moment, because they haven't had a particularly difficult start to the season, with the exception of Newcastle away, which is a difficult game. You would look at their fixtures and you wouldn't say that it's unfair to expect them to have got maybe at least 4 points. But they've only come away with 2.
I think they played quite well at Newcastle and lost the game 2-1, and I think coming on the back of that, I know quite a few Spurs fans, and on the back of that, I think they were thinking, well, home games against West Brom and Norwich, big chance to get our season started. Can be sitting there with 6 points from 3 games, and they're not. And I think the worry for Spurs fans is that 2 games have followed almost a carbon copy pattern. Spurs probably, didn't quite dominate the game as much on Saturday, but play well without scoring, then sort of finally force themselves onto the front foot, get the goal, and then retreat into a shell and end up taking a bit of a battering in the last 10 minutes. And both times concede an equaliser with, not long to go. And on both occasions, actually, both against West Brom and against Norwich, in the end, in the last 3 or 4 minutes, could lose the game. And certainly on Saturday, I have Brad Friedel to thank for not losing the game. And it's a worry. I'm already sensing that there's 1 or 2 who aren't going to have the patience that might be required for Mr. Villas-Boas, and they want to keep an eye on at the moment. They need to pick up some results quite quickly, and as I understand it, I don't think their upcoming fixtures immediately get particularly much easier. I think they're at Reading on the Sunday after the international break, and then I'm sure they've got one of the Manchester clubs following on the back of that. So they need to pick some results up pretty shortly, Spurs. Yeah,
they do appear to have a difficult. We've got a very difficult start ourselves. The fixture list hasn't been kind to Brendan Rodgers.
I think that's fair to say, and Liverpool were a bit below par yesterday. I didn't think they were particularly good tactically, I have to say. I thought they allowed Arsenal to get the ball from Mertesacker and Vermaelen to Arteta and Diaby with far too much ease, far too often. And if you allow people, certainly, Diaby was exceptional yesterday, but someone of the quality of Mikel Arteta with the passing ability that he has to get on the ball as much as Liverpool did yesterday without pressure on him, he will make his team play. And that's what he did yesterday, and Liverpool didn't press the game enough, and they do look slightly sort of lacking in a bit of cutting edge going forward. But I think what it's worth saying with Liverpool, they have had a tough start. They've only got 1 point from 3 games, and people, there's been some ridiculous things written today. You have to remember that 12 months ago, Arsenal had only taken 1 point from their first 3 games, and they've been beaten 8-2 at Manchester United, and they still finished best of the rest come the end of the season. So, Liverpool can only go one way, which is be patient and give Brendan Rodgers a bit of time, and results will start to turn.
And any other talk is foolish. I just thought Arsenal played very well yesterday. We had our problems. We competed well until Podolski scored, and from that moment we just seemed to go, oh dear, and just had no further ideas.
Yeah, I think the first goal was always going to be important in the game, to be honest, because I think they were both teams who maybe hadn't quite found their rhythm yet in the season, hadn't quite found their confidence. And it did feel to me like one of those games where the team that scored first would then put themselves in a position to take over the game. And as you say, that's really pretty much what Arsenal did, and they. I mean, we did have a number of good performances. We stayed pretty solid at the back. I think, other than Liverpool had a few shots from distance in the last sort of 10-15 minutes, particularly when John Joe Shelvey come on. But it was one of the more comfortable performances I've seen Arsenal have at Anfield, and that is 6 league games in a row at Anfield without defeat, which, considering we used to get panned there every year in the 1990s, is quite a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, Arsenal had the cigars out for the last 25 minutes. The second goal was crucial. It was a goalkeeping rick, which makes things even worse, but I just thought that Santi Cazorla was... My man of the match was Cazorla. I thought Diaby was superb, but Cazorla was a class above. I thought his movement was exceptional, and we just couldn't get near him.
Yeah, good player.
You must have been having a bit of a sweat on with 15 minutes to go, Calm, yesterday.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tricky one, to say the least. We haven't really looked like we've got started this season at all, to be honest with you. I think the players have gone on holidays. Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. I mean, Southampton have, although they're not reflected in the table, I think they've had a good start in the sense that they look a very sort of competent and a good side to watch. It's just unfortunate that they've had a tough start themselves, against City and United at the start. And they certainly gave us a scare. I mean, we can't give them full credit really. If they play that well against other teams, they'll be fine. But yeah, we just don't really look as though we've clicked into gear at all. We're just lucky that we do have one absolute top class player who at the moment is bailing us out. Whilst he obviously is a prolific striker, we can't sort of expect him. We shouldn't have to expect him to keep doing that, and we need to sort of pull our socks up a bit, really.
But that's what you paid the money out for ultimately, isn't it, Cam? That's what you paid £24 million for. Bang, 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 goal, goal, goal.
It certainly wasn't for his penalty taking, but... yeah, well, exactly.
I can only ever remember him missing one penalty for Arsenal, which ironically enough was in the 8-2 at Manchester United last season.
I think that the big thing with that penalty, with the whole situation around the penalty, was farcical, full stop, wasn't it?
Oh, I mean, it was dreadful goalkeeping, and then the reason Southampton keep throwing results away is because they keep giving away some absolutely dreadful goals. The two centre halves are Park Drive footballers. I'm sorry, they're just so far out of their depth, it's untrue. The left back, although I don't think he had a particularly bad game, Danny Fox, I thought he was a little bit slow to get out to close the ball down for the cross that came in for the second goal. But other than that, I thought Danny Fox had an okay game. But the two centre halves are just way out of their comfort zone. Having said that, I really actually enjoyed that game yesterday afternoon, and I almost fell back in love with Robin van Persie. He's just an absolute joy to watch. His first goal is just... I know Klein slips. I'm not convinced he's getting there anyway. It's absolute brilliant football. Great pull off the shoulder of the defender. Fantastic control. Great finish. And how many times have we seen him do that for Arsenal in the last sort of 12, 18 months? He's an absolute top-draw footballer. He's a joy to watch. He plays the game... in a way that most players just aren't capable of, and his header even to win it, that's probably the best header I've ever seen him score. And if he sort of turns into a supreme header of the ball as well, then there's pretty much nothing he can't do.
Well, to be fair to you, Paul, that's very magnanimous of you, because there was about 2,000, 3,000 of your compatriots yesterday who were singing a song about "She Said No, Robin, oh no, she said no."
Yeah, well, he will get stick off Arsenal fans. There's no question about that. That's always going to be the case when a player moves to a major rival in the way that Robin van Persie did. But I just thought he was absolutely exceptional yesterday, and just a pleasure to watch. And Manchester United, I mean, here's a stat, because I heard these kind of stats a lot last year with Arsenal when he was bailing us out. But without Robin van Persie's goals, Man United are 19th in the Premier League. So there's one to keep the Manchester United fans busy for a little while. No, he's a sensational player, and when you've got someone that good, you've always got a chance.
It also shows you just how early days it is yet, and how formative the Premier League table is, and how ridiculous it is that people panic after such a short period of time, unless you're Sammy Lee as your manager, in which case you're entitled to be concerned like Bolton did 3 or 4 years ago. Another team I'd like to mention actually is Swansea, who continue to score goals, but they were pegged back by Steve Fletcher's Premier League debut for Sunderland.
Yeah, they give away 2 bad goals, actually, Swansea the weekend. First sign of them really being asked to defend in a game. It was a sort of being asked to defend, I don't want to sound dismissive, but the sort of traditional Martin O'Neill tactics. And they didn't defend them very well. And you know, Fletcher's proven at Burnley and at Wolves that he can score goals at this level. I think £14 million is an astronomical sum of money for him. But you know, he got 2 goals on his debut, so you have to sort of say, well, there you go, that proves the point. It's a bit like you've just said to Khan about Van Persie at Manchester United. When you pay the money, and you pay big money for players of that quality, if they deliver, the money almost becomes not important. It's only when they don't deliver that people start to look at transfer fees.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely right. I mean, everyone, rightly or wrongly, probably rightly looks at Andy Carroll's transfer fee, which was exorbitant.
But if he'd scored 20 goals for Liverpool last season, it would never have been an issue.
There wouldn't have been a mention of it now.
No.
And of course, when he was at Liverpool, he was a £35 million flop, and now we've loaned him to West Ham and not brought a replacement in. It was all sympathy on the Andy Carroll bandwagon, which is just bizarre to me. Speaking of Andy Carroll, we'll return to West Ham. Aladici's tactics are working a treat, and they caused Fulham a lot of problems on Saturday afternoon.
No, I think that's right. I think West Ham sort of got at Fulham very early, didn't they? And no Premier League manager ever likes to see the team concede a goal within 60 seconds of the kick-off, because that pretty much kills your game plan dead. And Fulham didn't really cope with West Ham at all, and they certainly didn't cope with Carroll. It's a shame about his injury, because I think they were just preparing Carlton Cole to actually come on for him. And again, you know, obviously at a much lower level, I've stood in the dugout and had the exact same thing happen, where your star players sort of won you the game, and you're just preparing to take him off and wrap him in cotton wool, and in the seconds before you can make the substitution, somebody clatters into him, or he lands funny, and he's out for a period of time. So that's a blow for West Ham. But in terms of their tactics, they got it spot on. And I've already seen enough from West Ham at home to suggest they will get enough points at Upton Park to keep them in the Premier League.
I mean, you never like playing against a Sam Allardyce team anyway, do you? But West Ham will be fine. I don't think there was ever, for me, towards the relegation trouble anyway. So I'm not surprised to see them doing okay. The other game we've not really touched upon, there's only 2. There's Newcastle against Villa, which was a strange game to be shunted to like 4 o'clock on a Sunday that's not televised, because that would be a good game. I know why it was done, because it was obviously the Europa League, but you thought that might have been televised at some point. Good result.
Well, they're normally 3 o'clock, aren't they, though, if they're just shunted for Europa League? I'm not sure why it was a 4 o'clock kick-off.
Good result for Villa, though.
Good result from Villa, and from the Match of the Day 2 highlights, which is all I've seen, looked like a much improved Villa performance as well.
Yeah, well, they obviously signed. They had the new player. Did any of the new lads play?
I'm not sure they did. I'm not sure they got clearance in time. I may be wrong on that.
Well, Shea Given didn't play, so the result was always going to improve.
Yeah, and that was a big call, and absolutely the right one from Paul Lambert, and he needs to carry on making brave calls, as he says. He's made some brave decisions in the transfer market, and you know, Paul Lambert's a man of principle, and he'll stick with it. He will give those young players their opportunity at Aston Villa.
Yeah, absolutely, and this should be. It may take time, but again, I don't think Villa will get relegated either.
Just very, very quickly, I just want to touch very, very briefly on Newcastle. I'm worried about whether Newcastle have got their system right at the moment. At the end of last season, they were playing a 4-3-3. And Cisse and Ben Arfa were absolutely revelling in it. The problem was Demba Ba looked out of place, and they seem to have reverted to something much more akin to a 4-4-2 at the start of this season, to sort of get Ba back as a centre forward alongside Cisse. And to me, they don't look, again, I've only seen clips, I've only seen bits. I saw some of the game at Chelsea and some of the game against Spurs. They don't look as though they've got the same fluidity in their football, and I just wonder if maybe they're trying to accommodate Ba and Cisse as centre forwards to the detriment of the overall shape of the team. It's just something to see whether see whether they go back to a 4-3-3 in the coming weeks.
And last, and by all means least, Wigan against Stoke. Actually seemed like a decent game on Saturday.
I think it was. I thought it looked again from the highlights I've seen quite a decent game, and again Wigan have had very quietly. Wigan have had a good start to the season. I thought they were bang unlucky against Chelsea on the opening day. They made life really difficult for them by not kicking off till 10 minutes after the game started. Since then they've had a good away win at Southampton. You know, and away wins for a club like Wigan are massive, and a point at home to Stoke in what looked like a very, very even game. And I think, if anything, at the moment, Wigan probably looks slightly the better of those two sides. I still think, I know he brought 1 or 2 in on the window, Tony Pulis, but I still think there's a bit of work to be done at Stoke.
Wigan, to be fair, are indebted to El Absi for a world-class save.
Oh yeah, that was a fantastic save at the end, and he for me is one of the shocks of the last 5 years, because when I first saw him playing goal for Bolton, I didn't think he'd got a Scooby-Doo. And then he's been absolutely brilliant since he's gone to Wigan. And he in the last 2 years, when they've survived right at the death, he's played as big a part as the likes of Nzogbia 2 years ago or Victor Moses last year. And they've had all the plaudits and the big moves, but Al Absi's won in points in games.
Yeah, he is a top-class goalkeeper. I'm a big fan of his. He's a very good goalkeeper. Anything else you want to add, Khan? Although we have missed one game which I've forgotten about, sorry, but we'll go back to that in a bit.
Well, no, I was just going to say about Wigan that they really look quite impressive. I think Di Santo seems to be in a good run of form. They always seem to have a bit like what Paul's just said. They always seem to have sort of one outfield player, and usually either an attacking midfielder or a striker who sort of drives them each season, who then usually gets a move elsewhere. And it's sort of happened for about 3 years now, but it seems they always have someone one way or another, and maybe that'll be him this season. But they look all right, and obviously it is very early days, but looks like they might be maybe not quite as much in the scrap as they have been. But as we said, it is only 3 games, so you never know.
I think just to go back on what Collins just said, I think Franco Di Santo, going back to the end of last season, I think it's 5 in his last 8 or something like that, and he'd never shown any signs of being anything like prolific before then. So if they can get him and keep him, because they have got him, but if they can keep him scoring at that kind of rate, that's a huge boost for a club like Wigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. I still think Franco Di Santo's a very average footballer, to say the least, but he does seem to score goals when it's important.
Yeah, he's certainly in good form at the moment. And again, I think he's probably not top class, but or even sort of Premier League upper mid-table class. But if he's scoring goals, then as far as Wigan's concerned, that can only be a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Wigan will depend on picking up results. That's a better result for Wigan than it is Stoke. But
yeah, I don't think it's a bad result for Stoke.
No, it's not. No.
For me, I think I said on the previous, for Stoke this year, actually, I think it's going to be lower mid-table at best anyway. So they're the kind of games, pick up a point, move on. From Wigan's perspective, every point they can keep themselves ahead of the likes of QPR, who are down there, and Southampton, who are down there, and Reading, who are down there, and Norwich, who are down there. All it may only be a couple of points at this stage, but who knows, come March, they may be a couple of very important points.
Exactly, early doors at the moment. The one result I've forgotten about would happen to be the champions against QPR's 4,000-man squad.
Yeah, I think, again, I didn't see any of this game, but I have read a couple of match reports which essentially focused on the fact that poor old Esteban Granero, who signed from Real Madrid's New Galacticos on Friday, spent I think he was on the pitch about 60 minutes, spent 60 minutes running round, chasing the ball, and came off looking shell-shocked and exhausted. Welcome to the Premier League, Esteban.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a difficult place for him to start, to be fair.
Well, I think as well, when you're used to playing with Mesut Ozil and Xabi Alonso, I think playing with that big the big fella, the big African fella they signed from the French league at the end of last season in the middle of the QPR midfield, maybe something of a culture shock.
Yeah, I mean they did have a productive end to the window, QPR, it must be said, but productive isn't always necessarily a sign of quality.
I think the thing we should say, obviously, is they signed Julio Cesar, didn't they, late on from Inter Milan in the last couple of days of the window. I think the person for whom that seems to spell really bad news is Robert Green, because he had an absolute shocker, didn't he, on his debut? And I suspect his QPR career may be over before it's begun. The one thing I think we would say, whilst they made some signings in the final days of the window, they didn't get that centre half, did they, that they've been looking for. They were in for Dawson, they were in for Carvalho, and they I know they got Mbia from Marseille, but I see him more as a defensive midfield player. I don't know whether they're going to use him there or use him at centre half, but they certainly didn't get Carvalho or Dawson, both of whom I think would have been fantastic additions.
Yeah, that's certainly a big issue for QPR at any rate. But no last minute Aguero dramatics. It was a pretty routine win for City in the end, and I've got Yahya Toure as my fantasy team captain, so I was quite pleased. He
did seem pretty routine. I've got him in my team as well, so I'm not too proud to have the odd City player, and as long as it's not Tevez, I don't mind.
Well, Tevez would have got you good points this week. He scored.
Yeah, I know, but still, I do have some principles. Not many, but you know.
The
only thing I want to say about that is I really want QPR to get relegated this season.
Any particular reason?
Mark Hughes mainly, but just generally how the club is run. It's just go away.
Yeah, it might not happen this year, but the Fernandes thing will end in tears.
Yeah.
Any particular?
Sooner rather than later, it will end in tears.
Any particular reason?
Well, I don't think he's got the money he's spending. That's the reason.
Oh, those kind of tears.
Yeah, I think he's spending money, and then eventually someone's going to say you're going to pay for any of this, and then I think we may have a problem.
Huh? What do you mean pay for it? At which point Mark Hughes will just blame everybody else other than himself.
Well, it won't be Mark Hughes' fault.
No.
Again, I think I pointed one of his quotes out the other day, and he said, on the opening day of the season, the players let everyone down. So just to make clear that even though they got smashed 5, it definitely wasn't anything like Mark Hughes' fault.
No, it's never Mark Hughes' fault. You know the rules by now, mate. Cracking player, and
Bit of an idiot as a manager.
I was going to use more agricultural language, but yeah, bit of an idiot as manager. Yeah.
This is a family podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If we move on then to the international weekend, which is coming up, I don't like this. Yeah, I don't like this, mate. I don't like this international. So we're early into the season.
No, I think we were saying in the deadline podcast, weren't we, that it's sort of almost, this is almost the prelude to the season, those 3 games that have been played, and then it properly kicks off when the international break's been and gone. I believe England are in Moldova, aren't they?
We are.
And then have we got another game as well? Do we play someone else?
I'm not too sure. That's my interest in it.
Yeah, as you can see, we're all extremely concerned about the fate of Roy Hodgson's side in the forthcoming World Cup qualifiers, as I now desperately scroll down to see if we're playing any other teams. We must be playing somebody.
Well, we play on Friday night, don't we?
We play on Friday night. That's Moldova.
Is it usually the sort of Friday and Tuesday?
I think it's Friday, Tuesday now. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've got some other games. I think we probably play Friday and then again in the group. I think it's the double headers, aren't they, generally? So I would expect a second game.
Well, the Friday and Tuesday move was to try and placate the clubs, wasn't it, by giving them an extra day back with the player?
Yeah, I think that was the purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's worked or not, I don't know. It's certainly not galvanised my interest in international football.
No.
I will watch the game.
Actually, I mean, again, Con and I were just talking actually before you joined us on the podcast, Dan, about whether we whether we might go out Friday night, and it's really actually quite an annoyance when they put international football on a Friday evening. I'll be honest, on a Friday, I can just about abide it on a Saturday evening. On a Friday evening, international football is about as low down my list of concerns as it could possibly be.
It's Wigan against Saints on Friday.
Yeah, I have to say, Dan, Wigan against Saints won't be at the top of my priority list.
Good, because it's not live.
Right, well, there you go. No, but it's just I don't see why they can't play Saturday, Tuesday. Why can't they play Saturday, Tuesday?
It's just a strange one.
Play Saturday in the league, Tuesday in the Champions League. Why have they got a Friday night? It's complete nonsense.
Well, I don't know. Chelsea tried to play.
The odd championship game on a Friday night for a Friday where I'm not going out, that's fine. I can just deal with that. Internationals on a Friday night are nonsense.
To be fair, I bet Chelsea police or little people would have thought that there was a game on Friday night.
They got rather turned over, didn't they, by Atletico? I think just very, very briefly on that, I think it did show this Chelsea team has still got some work to do in finding the perfect balance between trying to play a more expansive game, as they seem to be trying to do with the players they've signed, and also having some sort of structure and organisation defensively. I know they were missing John Terry, but the goals, they looked a complete mess.
Whilst that's true, mate, I don't think they're going to come up against a striker of the quality of Falcao very often in the league.
No, that may be true, but I do think there's still question marks about the quality of Chelsea's defending.
Yeah, there's room for doubt. There's no denying that whatsoever. But there's only really a handful of players of Falcao. I mean, Falcao for me at the moment is the best out-and-out striker in the world. Not player, but striker in the world at the moment.
I don't think he's better than Robin van Persie.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's open to interpretation. I'd love to see how Falcao did in this league, only as long as he was in a Liverpool shirt. But that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, obviously. So.
Well, if you can't afford Clint Dempsey, I think Falcao might be slightly out of the price range.
I think the thing with Dempsey was that we could afford him, we just weren't willing to pay what Fulham wanted, which was approximately 7 million. And to me, when you back yourself into a corner, which we had done, you just sigh and put your hands in your pockets and pay the extra £3 million. Personally, I think we should have anyway, but I would, because I'm now concerned because we've got no real, shall we say, discernible quality up front, but I'm sort of used to it, so what's an extra 3 months? Because they've released an open letter today stating that they are dedicated to this and dedicated to that. I just read over it and rolled my eyes, to be honest, but that's just me.
I wonder if we can just pick up very quickly on one or two results outside the Premier League, Dan, that caught my eye.
Of course.
Over the course of the weekend. One in particular, you'll remember me saying a couple of weeks ago that I was worried for the future of Derby County in the Championship. And I'd seen nothing in the first two results that they'd had this season the first three results they had this season to change my mind on that. However, they did manage to win a game on Saturday, their first home win since, way back into last season. They beat Watford 5-1. Now this is Watford, don't forget, who have appointed Gianfranco Zola, signed half of the Udinese squad on loan, and are talking about making a challenge for a promotion place. And I haven't seen the goals, I haven't seen the Football League show, but to get beat 5-1 at Derby is a dismal result. And again, I'm not sure this is all going to go swimmingly at Watford. I've got a feeling this one could turn sour quite quickly as well.
Yeah, it was a strange one, that, wasn't it? It was when players were turning up on loan because they were owned by the same people.
Well, they own three clubs. They own Udinese, Granada and Watford. And everybody who Watford signed in the summer seemed to be on loan from either Udinese or Granada. And at the moment it looks a bit of a... I think I looked at the team, I think there were 4 or 5 loan players played on Saturday, and that looks like a recipe for disaster to me, trying to bring players out of the sort of reserve teams of Spanish and Italian top division clubs and saying, there you go and play in the Championship where you need your tin hat. It doesn't bode well for me. If you remember going back all those years to the last time somebody with all the gear and no idea bought Watford. They appointed Gianluca Vialli as manager. He brought in a load of Italians, and they spent most of the season just outside the relegation zone. I can see something very similar happening.
Yeah, I must say that the early signs aren't too good. I mean, they signed Manuel Almunia, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and then they let 5 goals in.
I'm sure you will be surprised about that.
Yeah, well, there we go. And interestingly, just as a complete aside, you'll have seen the news today that Wolves have parted company with Terry Connor. Poor old Terry Connor, who got completely
stitched up
in it last year with the manager's job, and then they sort of demoted him back to assistant manager and brought Stella Stull back. And in the summer, they've only taken 4 points from their first 4 games. So who does that axe fall on? It falls on poor old Terry Connor, and he's been sacked from his role as assistant manager. Seems very, very harsh to me. I think there's more to that than meets the eye. Again, another club where I sense that all isn't necessarily well behind the scenes.
After having a good start, I invested some money. I have a £1 maximum bet every Saturday, and I was on for £60 until Gillingham failed to beat Chesterfield.
Right.
I wasn't best pleased, but they have had a good start to them, to be fair.
Yeah, and I mean, well, just very quickly on League One, because there was one result in there particularly that I wanted to mention, which was Preston yesterday, beating Swindon 4-1, and I'm sure everyone's aware now of the Di Canio incident, if we can call it that, where his goalkeeper made a bit of a cock-up for the opening Preston goal. So Di Canio substituted his goalkeeper after 20 minutes, at which point his goalkeeper and Di Canio had a blazing row on the touchline. His goalkeeper ran down the touchline towards a tunnel, kicked a water bottle, shouted an expletive back up the touchline in the direction of Di Canio. Di Canio then gave an absolutely hilarious post-match interview, which you can get on the BBC website, where he says he's the least professional player he's ever worked with. It's complete theatre. The slightly bizarre thing about it is that this goalkeeper apparently conceded just 14 goals in 40 games last year. So I'd suggest he's doing something right. Apparently he didn't play very well in the League Cup at Stoke in the week, and then he made a mistake at Preston. But I'm not convinced it was great management by Di Canio. Equally, having said that, the goalkeeper acted entirely unprofessionally once he'd been brought off. However, they've all kissed and made up today, and everything's right in the world. So
that sounds like a Di Canio story to me.
Yeah. So let's see what happens next week in the wonderful world of Paolo Di Canio.
Supporting Swindon must be interesting at the moment. To be fair,
I mean, until then, they've had a surprisingly good start to the season, haven't they? So yeah, we should probably cut him a little bit of slack, because until then things weren't going too badly at all.
But things are always likely to change with Paulo.
Yeah, poor old Paolo Di Canio.
Anything else? Anything you want to mention at all, or are we done
again,
here?
Just very, very quickly, just on League Two. Another weekend, another disappointing result for AFC Wimbledon, and they're sort of 4 from 4 at the moment, and not had a particularly good start, letting a lot of goals in. They had a 2-2 draw with Dagenham, who were definitely going to be down there scrapping for survival at the end of the season. The AFC Wimbledon sort of train was flying along until about January last year, and then it just absolutely collapsed. And they're another one of these clubs, Dan, who just hasn't been able to shake that bad form from the end of the season before, and they need to start winning very quickly. I wonder if they may be quite close to a change of management. It'd be a big decision because Terry Brown brought him into the Football League, but I wonder if they may be close to thinking about a new manager. Yeah,
it's a possibility that I mean they will play when the internationals are on, and maybe if they have a bad result this weekend, they may have to make the change.
Yeah.
Just one thing I'd like to mention, just breaking. Well, it's not breaking particularly, but Moriles is about to sign for Fenerbahce for 8 million apparently, and the amount of money that Zenit St. Petersburg have just spent on Hulk and Witsel is apparently 90 million euros.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge amount of money, and I mean I have to say, and Matteo won't like this, but I'm not entirely convinced by Hulk and never have been. Good player, but too often I see him and think, well, you've been ordinary today, and certainly the couple of times I've seen him in the flesh, I've not been impressed. So, I mean, it's an awful lot of money for him, I have to say that. Witsel, I don't know as much about. Again, he's another one of this sort of promising generation of Belgian players, isn't he? So, is Russia the best move for him when I think maybe one or two of the bigger clubs in Europe might have looked at him? I don't know. I don't think he's a Premier League player anyway, Witsel, because he's very, very sort of short and lightweight. But it'd be interesting to see how he does out there. Morelos, I mean, is he just going to have a move every transfer window? Does he? What's up? Does he like getting a new signing on fee every summer? Is that the crack?
I just think he likes going to a new club that don't realise he doesn't tackle, and then
I'm not sure tackling will be as compulsory in Turkey as it's been in the Premier League for him. But it does leave Chelsea interestingly, doesn't it? Having loaned Essien out to then sell Morelos as well. Maybe they're leaving themselves a little bit light in midfield. I don't know. But I
didn't realise they'd loaned Essien out. Actually.
Yeah, Essien went to Real Madrid on Friday on a season.
As you do.
As you do. Well, I mean, Arsenal were registered an interest on Friday morning, but Chelsea were quite clear that whilst they put him on the list to make him available for loan,
it wasn't to go to a rival down the road.
To Arsenal. They'd made that mistake last year with Yossi Benayoun, and they weren't about to make it again. He went to Real Madrid and then did an extremely bizarre press conference on Saturday morning where he kept referring to Mourinho as daddy. So, I mean, on that bombshell.
Mourinho was the special daddy, obviously.
Indeed.
That's really amused me a lot more than it should have, to be honest. Well, we've covered the week's football. It's a bit humorous. I've enjoyed this because I was really angry on Friday, and some days obviously not lighting my mood any. So I've really enjoyed having a good laugh this evening.
Well, if that's all we've done, Dan, then that's a service.
Happy to be of service.
Right, well, remember, if you want to discuss anything that we've talked about tonight, you can always join www.big-football-forum.co.uk. You can log on there and let us know your thoughts. We'd certainly be very interested to hear them. But that's all from us this evening. We hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and we'll be back with another one probably the week after the internationals now. Because I don't think we can talk for half an hour about international football. That's
find out what the games are.
Know what the fixtures are, which may be a bit of a
it could make it interesting. Maybe we should.
You're on. All right. Well, thank you very much for your company, gentlemen.
No problem, Dan.
And we'll speak to you soon.